Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Janabalava Girivardhari. Jasodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Jasodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Jamuna Tiravanachari. Jamuna Tiravanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Jana Balava Girivardhari. Jasodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Jamuna Tiravanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Rama Ramo, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Rama Ramo, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Rama Ramo, Hare Hare. His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Tanyeva te bhirupani. Tanyeva te bhirupani. Rupani Bhagavam Stava. Rupani Bhagavam Stava. Jani Jani Charochante, Jani Jani Charochante, Swajanam Arupinaha, Swajanam Arupinaha, Tanyevate Virupani, Rupani Bhagavam Stava, Jani Jani Charochante, Swajananam Harupinaha. Tanyeva te virupani, Rupani Bhagavam Stava, Jani Jani Charochante, Swajananam Arupinaha, Tanyeva te virupani, Rupani Bhagavam Stava, Jani Jani Charochante, Swajananam Arupinaha, Tanyeva te virupani, Rupani Bhagavam Stava, Jani Jani Charochante, Swajananam Arupinaha. Ladies? Jani Vati Burupani, Rupani Bhagavam Stava, Jani Jani Charochante, Swajanam Harupinaha. Tani, those, eva, truly, te, your, abhirupani, suitable, rupani, forms, Bhagavan, O Lord, tava, your, Jani Jani, whichever, cha, and, rochante, are pleasing, swajananam, to your own devotees, arupinaha, of one with no material form. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. My dear Lord, although you have no material form, you have your own innumerable forms. They truly are your transcendental forms, which are pleasing to your devotees. Translation responsively. My dear Lord, although you have no material form, you have your own innumerable forms. They truly are your transcendental forms, which are pleasing to your devotees. Report by Srila Prabhupada. In the Brahma Samhita, it is stated that the Lord is one absolute, but he has ananta, or innumerable forms. Advaitam achyutam anadim ananta rupam. The Lord is the original form, but still he has multi-forms. Those multi-forms are manifest by him transcendentally, according to the taste of his multi-devotees. It is understood that once Hanuman, the great devotee of Lord Ramachandra, said that he knew that Narayan, the husband of Lakshmi, and Rama, the husband of Sita, are one and the same, and that there is no difference between Lakshmi and Sita. But as for himself, he liked the form of Lord Ram. In a similar way, some devotees worship the original form of Krishna. When we say Krishna, we refer to all forms of the Lord, not only Krishna, but Ram, Nrsimha, Varaha, Narayan, etc. The varieties of transcendental forms exist simultaneously. That is also stated in the Brahma Samhita, Ramadi Murtishu Nanavataram. He already exists in multi-forms, but none of the forms are material. Sridhar Swami has commented that Arupinaha, without form, means without material form. The Lord has form. Otherwise, how can it be stated here, Tanyevati Birupani Rupani Bhagavam Stava? Translation of that which we... You have your forms, but they are not material. Materially, you have no form, but spiritually, transcendentally, you have multi-forms. Mayavadi philosophers cannot understand these transcendental forms of the Lord, and being disappointed, they say that the Supreme Lord is impersonal. But that is not a fact. Whenever there is form, there is a person. Many times in many Vedic literatures, the Lord is described as Purusha, which means the original form, the original enjoyer. The conclusion is that the Lord has no material form, and yet, according to the liking of different grades of devotees, he simultaneously exists in multi-forms such as Ram, Nrsimha, Varaha, Narayan, and Mukunda. There are many thousands and thousands of forms, but they are all Vishnu Tattva, Krishna. Translation again. My dear Lord, although you have no material form, you have your own innumerable forms. They truly are your transcendental forms, which are pleasing to your devotees. Om Naganati Marandasya Ganananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tajmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Panchakalpa Trubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. This is such a wonderful verse. While I've been researching it, like Prabhupada says, the Lord it's mentioned in so many parts of the Vedic literature that Krishna has his transcendental forms, and that the Supreme Lord, the source of all incarnations, is Krishna. And I was thinking, we are so lucky that we've come in contact with Srila Prabhupada, who represents a bona fide parampara, a bona fide sampradaya. Imagine giving up your life and spending so many years studying under a guru, and then you start to read in the Vedic literatures that this form that you've been told is the supreme is not meant, in the Vedas it says someone else is the supreme. Like, I won't give names, but there's this new Hindu temple built just outside of New Jersey in America. And they've spent, I think it was $800 to $900 million, nearly $1 billion to build this temple. And their philosophy is that back in the 19th century, their guru appeared and he was an incarnation of Krishna. But you can search the Vedic literatures, you're not going to find that this person is an incarnation of Krishna. So almost $1 billion is built on who knows what. And then also then they come up with, different other philosophies that the Supreme Lord is actually impersonal like that. So Prabhupada says in today's verse, you have your own innumerable forms. He says in the Vedic literature the Lord is described as Purusha, which means the original enjoyer, the original form. And this Purusha is described in many parts of the Vedic literatures as being a person. For example, in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, Srila Prabhupada translates, there is no truth superior to that supreme person. In the beginning of Bhagavatam, first canto, third chapter, verse 28, there's a famous verse, Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. Lord Sri Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. And in the Brahma Samhita, Ishwaraha Parama Krishna, Satchidananda Vigraha, Anadi Adi Govinda Sava Karana Karanam. Ishwara Parama Krishna, the Supreme Lord, the Supreme is Krishna. He is Satchidananda Vigraha. He's blissful, eternal, full of knowledge, and it has a beautiful form, Vigraha. Prabhupada translates that as Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the Supreme Godhead. He has an eternal, blissful, spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin, and he is the prime cause of all causes. Krishna is the source of all other forms of the Supreme. He has no other source. Like it's described, the forms of the Supreme Lord are like the waves of the ocean. They're just coming and coming unlimitedly. But Krishna, that little boy playing with the cows, is the source of all these forms. All the symptoms of the Supreme are present in full in the person of Krishna. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, verse 7, the Lord emphatically declares, there is no truth superior to me. He says, everything rests upon me as pearls are strung upon a thread. In Bhagavad Gita 10.8, Krishna says, Aham savasya prabhavo matasavam pravartate. He says, I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. So we understand everything's emanating from Krishna. So the Supreme cannot be any less than his creation, yeah? Whatever he's created, he can't be less than that. So we all have forms and personality, which is what attracts us to one another. So how can the Supreme be formless? But there's a distinct difference. Our forms are made of the material elements. Basically, our bodies are made of the same stuff as any matter we see around us. And matter is always going through change. Matter is constantly changing. Our material bodies, we have these unfortunate byproducts that come from them. I was thinking, when you sweep the bathroom floor, there's all this dust and fluff and stuff. And most of it is actually skin cells that your body's got rid of. Because our bodies are materialized, are material. They're localized. They're only here in one place. Our senses can only perceive a limited sphere. So that materialists sort of think, well, if the Supreme is personal, he has a form, it doesn't mean he's localized. How can he be understanding everything? How can he be everywhere? But because they're trying to look at the Supreme through the context of our limited lens of understanding, then they come up with that philosophy of neti. Have you heard that? That the Supreme can't be like this, he can't be like that, he can't be like that. There's a series of negatives. In the purport to chapter 7, verse 7, there's, in the Bhagavad Gita, no, actually that's in the Svetashvara Upanishad. Srila Prabhupada quotes, he says, he translates that. He says, in the material world, Brahma is considered to be the supreme amongst demigods, amongst the human beings and the lower animals. Brahma is the supreme amongst the demigods, the human beings. But beyond Brahma, there is the transcendence, which has no material form and is free from all material contaminations. In that verse, there is that word arupam that Prabhupada quotes in today's purport. He says the impersonalists like to use that word arupam. He doesn't have a material form like we do. But that doesn't mean that he can't have a fully blissful, eternal spiritual form. And the Vedic literatures describe that wonderful, supreme, eternal form that he has. Prabhupada says in today's purport, he says, so wherever there is a form, there is a person. And the idea of a person brings with it ideas of activities, pastimes, likes and dislikes. All these things come with this idea of personality. We know the Vedic literature talks of 3 aspects of the Supreme. Any of the new devotees can tell me those 3 aspects? Anyone? Lucas? Those 3 aspects described in the Vedas of aspects of the Supreme. The 3 aspects the way the Supreme can appear. Very good. Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. Brahman is that unlimited, all-pervading effulgence emanating from the Supreme. Paramatma, what's Paramatma? Yeah, within all living entities, every living creature then, the Supreme is there. And then Bhagavan. What's Bhagavan? Bhagavan, Krishna, the Supreme, who embodies all these qualities, and he has his own form, his own activities. So I was thinking of those 3, this idea of Brahman is very popular, that undifferentiated oneness. A lot of people like this idea of an underlying force or energy. I was thinking even scientists or people like George Lucas in Hollywood, he came up with the you know who he is? Yeah, may the force be with you. All those Star Wars movies. So there's some idea there that there's a force behind everything, at the basis of everything. Or in the 70s, there was this famous book called the Tao of Physics. It was written by a physicist who went to India and he studied Vedic philosophy, and he found in some of the Vedic descriptions ideas that sort of seem to fit with their new understanding of the material energy of physics. But of course they only come with, you get as close as this sort of impersonal understanding. So if the Supreme is a person, and that he also exists within the heart of each of us, then that means we have some sort of relationship with him. Yeah. An individual relationship, a loving relationship that we can uncover. But if we have a relationship with him, maybe that brings with it this idea, maybe there's some sort of duty then, or some sort of responsibility on our part. So that brings with it certain responsibility or implications. The idea of if the Supreme is just an energy, well, pretty much I can just go along, keep on doing what I want to do, yeah? He's just some energy in the background. It doesn't put any sort of requirements on me. The idea that, like when you talk to visitors for the first time, or talk to people in the outside world, the idea that the Supreme is a person, it can sort of jolt them. Although I was reading, scientists who have sort of studied, generally speaking, they say, if there's a God, then he has to be a person. Otherwise, how can you explain all this? They're not all of them have jumped over the fence and become theists, but theoretically, if there's a God, then he has to be a person. Of course, when we use that word he, it brings a lot of baggage with it. You know, you think of Michelangelo's idea of an old guy with a beard. He's what do they say in the Christian scriptures? It says he's the rock of ages. He's been around a long time. So he must be old, right, and wrinkled. But the Supreme's not limited by our idea of time. In fact, time is initiated by him. Time I am, he says. So as far as having a relationship, it's in our very nature that we want to experience love. And we all want to express love. But in the material atmosphere, in the material sphere, we've all experienced that those sentiments of love, it can either be misplaced or they can be damaged by other living entities. As far as having a relationship with the Supreme, Prabhupada points out that the Supreme has to have a form, otherwise where is the question of love? We all accept that we all have this innate, deep in our hearts, we know that that's who we are. But Prabhupada says, where's this question of love? He says, you can't show love to a void or some sort of a light. Prabhupada says, where to love? Are you going to love the air? So there has to be a personality involved if we're going to have an experience, a loving relationship. Prabhupada says in the beginning, when we begin this process, he says, certainly one who is not advanced, we cannot see Krishna properly. He says, when we speak of Krishna, Krishna is not alone. He uses the example, he says, just like if you speak of the king. The king is coming. It doesn't mean that the king's going to turn up on his own. He's surrounded. When you say king, you mean it's all those people that come with him, his entourage. So I was thinking, like, if the Prime Minister was going to visit here today, you know he wouldn't turn up on his own. He'd be surrounded by his driver, his secretaries, his minders, a whole phalanx of press people. So wherever he goes, all that goes with him. So similarly, when we speak of Krishna, Prabhupada reminds us, Krishna does not mean alone Krishna. Like, I remember hearing in the early days of being a devotee, there were a lot of posters around with paintings of Krishna. And Prabhupada warned us, these posters where you see Krishna all on his own, maybe he's got like a light coming out of him, or sometimes he's sitting on an Om sign or something like that, all bogus. Krishna never appears alone. He always has his devotees with him. When we say, and actually it's described, we are part and parcel of Krishna. That Krishna, when he appears, all of the devotees, living entities, appear with him soon after. So there's no such thing as a lone Krishna. Even the names, Prabhupada points out, he says, Krishna is known as Nanda Kishora, Nanda Kumara, Nanda Nandana. All these names are describing Krishna as the son of Nanda Maharaj. Or like we sing with the Jai Radha Madhava prayers, we sing Jasoda Nandana. He's glorified as being the son of Mother Jasoda. That's Krishna. Prabhupada explains, he says, Krishna is more satisfied when we describe him in relationship with his devotee. So that therefore all those names. I couldn't say that, I don't have that realization, but Prabhupada says Krishna is more satisfied, he is more pleased when we describe him in relationship with his devotees. Prabhupada goes on, he says, when we are further advanced, we do not see only Krishna, but we see his devotees also. We can recognize here as a pure devotee of Krishna. Pure can just mean, it doesn't mean that you don't have any anarthas still, but you're not worshipping for any external reason. You're not worshipping Krishna along with a whole bunch of others. You're worshipping Krishna. We do not see Krishna, but we see his devotees also. Prabhupada says, this is a quote from Srila Prabhupada, he says, but in the lower stage, the devotee is concerned with the deity worship, but he does not take much care of the devotees. It's so deep, isn't it, this idea that you want to please Krishna, then please his devotees. He says, but when one is advanced further, we can see Krishna and his devotees also. Ishvara tad adina. So Ishvara is Krishna. And then tad adina. Tad adina means the devotees. Devotees are always immersed in the service of Krishna. It's an integral part of their identity. Prabhupada goes on, he says, so anyone who's giving service to Krishna, we should take care of them also. We should offer our respect. And we know, as time has gone on, since Srila Prabhupada left especially, it hasn't always happened. That Krishna's devotees haven't always been looked after so well that, I can be standing there trying to please Krishna and at the same time ignoring his devotees. It doesn't work. Prabhupada quotes from Nectar of Devotion, which is the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. He says, he said that if a devotee is coming, then another devotee, this is a direct quote from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he says, if another devotee is coming, then the devotee who is engaged in worshipping the deity, he may even stop deity worship for the time being, and he should go immediately to receive the devotee. I mean, I don't think Prabhupada's advocating that if you're there doing arti, just sort of keep looking around, and if anyone you know comes in, just stop and go and say hello. But it's saying that recognizing another devotee is on that level. Krishna says, Mad Bhakta Puja Abhyadika. Krishna is satisfied more when a devotee worships his devotee. Krishna says, if one is worshipping me and one is worshipping my devotee, they're like two different people, then the person who is worshipping the devotee is more important than the person who is worshipping Krishna. I was thinking worshipping, that word worshipping here means, it's pretty simple really. It just means perform some service, support the devotee, encourage each other. Unfortunately, it's so simple to do, but it hasn't always gone on in our sort of struggle with our false egos, competition, envy still in the heart. We haven't always treated other devotees very nicely. Prabhupada comments, an advanced devotee will never disrespect another devotee. Interesting, huh? We wonder, sometimes we sort of wonder, am I advancing or not? So there's one of the sort of signs that I would never disrespect or, say anything negative about another devotee. Which doesn't mean, people who are in a position of management, they have to do things, but deep in our heart. Disrespect to another devotee is a great offense, Vaishnava Aparad. Vaishnava Aparad is a very serious offense. We've seen people who claim to be disciples of Prabhupada abuse other devotees, disrespect other devotees, and still think they're going on thinking that they're serving Krishna. It doesn't happen. He says, therefore, we teach to address, I love it, this is Prabhupada's language, therefore we teach to address amongst the devotees, Prabhu, Prabhu, such and such Prabhu. He says, this should not simply be spoken by the lips. It should be realized. What does Prabhu mean? Everyone should think that other devotee as his or her Prabhu, master. Not that he should try to become master. Like in the verse where we chant in the Shikshashtakam, Trinadapi Sanichana Tarorapi Sahishnana Amanina Manadena Kirtanaya Sadahari. So those lines, Amanina Manadena. Amanina means without being puffed up by false pride. And Manadena means giving respect to everyone. We should be always ready to offer respect to all, Prabhupada says. Not only devotees. He says we should offer respect to everyone. He says, because every living entity is originally a devotee of Krishna, but circumstantially, being covered by the coat of Maya, he's playing like a demon. But his original nature is a devotee of Krishna. So we offer respect. Like I mentioned earlier, Prabhupada says, in the beginning we cannot see Krishna properly. Our senses are contaminated. Our minds are full of impressions that are not always very helpful. Bhagavad Gita 9, chapter 9, verse 22 and 23, Krishna says, but those who are worshipping me with devotion, he says, meditating on my transcendental form. I really like this line. He says, To them I carry what they lack and preserve what they have. I carry what they lack, he says. This is a really good God to worship, I think. I carry what they lack. That implies we're all individuals. We all have things that we are lacking in, which is different for each person. Yeah, someone's strong in that, but a bit weak in that side. So Krishna says, whatever you're lacking, I'll carry that. And whatever nice things you have, whatever good qualities, I preserve that. I think we're not like a bunch of cookies, all the same. Krishna can preserve our individuality, while at the same time we all identify together as devotees. But we're never going to become just a bunch of cookie-cutter individuals. We're going to that individuality will actually blossom. When I think of devotees who I've known for so many years, their individuality actually blossoms. It doesn't go away. They all have something very unique and special to offer to Krishna. Krishna assures that anyone who is always engaged in Krishna consciousness, he says, his happiness will not be lacking. He will also be happy, he says, because I will supply him whatever he requires. He doesn't promise that you're going to be rich, whatever. But he says, he will also be happy because I will supply him whatever he requires. Unfortunately, what did Prabhupada say recently already? We identify with matter. So sometimes I forget that being happy is deeper than owning anything, having a position, having all sorts of material objects around me, but maybe not being happy in the midst of it all. So as devotees, our individual personalities will become purified, but we will remain individuals. We can have differences of opinion. I remember reading years ago from Sridhar Swami, Prabhupada's godbrother. The devotees were complaining. This could have been after Srila Prabhupada had left. That the devotees were complaining of differences of opinion amongst themselves. I don't agree with that one, He doesn't agree with me. She doesn't agree with me. But Sridhar Maharaj was saying, to wish for some utopian situation where different opinions and likes and dislikes don't exist is Mayavad. It's just, that undifferentiated state. In the spiritual world, there's all sorts of difference going on all the time. The spiritual world is one of eternal variegatedness. In the Ramayana, Valmiki Muni is talking to Lord Ram, and he says, this is really interesting. He says, those who consider their good qualities to be the Lord's gift and their deficiencies to be their own fault, who adopt the good qualities of others and leave whatever faults they may have, just leave them aside. He says, they make a divine residence for their lordships in their heart. Isn't that nice? You want to create a space where Krishna would like to sit in your heart? We think of our good qualities to be the Lord's gift, and my deficiencies, well, they're of my own making. I adopt the good qualities of other people, and whatever deficiencies I may see, just leave that aside. If I act like that, I'm making a residence for the Supreme Lord in my heart. On a material level, we're all different. Male, female, young, old, short, different coloured skin, strong, not very strong. We all inhabit different forms. So there's no commonality on that platform. We all have different interests on a material level. But spiritually we share the same common nature. We're a tiny atomic spiritual soul, or Atma, energizing a material form, and we have desires that can never be satisfied materially. But we keep looking and looking, because our nature is to look for that taste. How does it go in the Shikshastakam? We're always looking for that taste for which we're always anxious. That's the nature of the soul, to want to experience that ananda, because that is the nature of the soul, Satchidananda. But we tend to focus on small problems without considering the really big problem. At a certain point, we don't know when we're going to leave this body. That's the big problem. Whatever consciousness that we have developed at that point when we do leave the body, Krishna says, without a doubt, that state you will attain next. Whatever state you have developed in this body, you're going to get that state next, in your next body. But the mind, it likes to focus on small details, isn't it? And stress on those small details. On that plane, like on that material plane, we're always going to feel there's something lacking. We won't be happy. I'm missing something. Or if I get this, or do that, or go there, then I'm going to be happy. Yeah? If only that thing happens, then I'm going to be happy. But we won't. If I can't be happy now, then I'm not going to be happy then. Prabhupada says, chant and right now. In the Katha Upanishad, there's a sort of a warning. It says, if I leave behind my eternal nature and focus on the temporary, I lose both. If I leave behind my eternal nature and focus on that which is temporary, I lose both. Because we know by definition, material things are not going to last. Yeah, material things are all temporary. They're all flickering. They're all changing. And if I've left behind my spiritual nature, then I've lost everything. So, in the Bhagavatam, it describes that Krishna, who is the center of our discussion, he describes that Krishna has 64 principal qualities or attributes. He says all these expansions or categories of the Lord that we've mentioned, the Vishnu forms and what have you, they all possess a smaller percentage of these attributes. It describes, like for example, Vishnu Tattva forms have 93%, but Krishna has 64. So he has 4 attributes that no other forms have. It's described that in the conditioned state of existence, the living entity possesses these attributes, but only in a minute quality. If you look in the Nectar of Devotion, it describes all those qualities of Krishna: chivalrous, brave, so many things, kind. So in the conditional state, the living being can have a small number of these attributes. I remember when the British Queen was still alive, Prabhupada said that she must have been the most pious person in the country, because she was in that birth, she was given such an amazing position. Imagine to live with that amount of wealth, with that amount, like she had good looks when she was young, so much influence. She was famous all over the world. All these things are small qualities that Krishna has already, that he has in full. So these 4 qualities that Krishna has that no other form possesses. He's the performer of wonderful varieties of pastimes, especially his childhood pastimes. Number 1. Number 2, he's surrounded by devotees who are endowed with wonderful love of God. It goes back to what we were saying earlier. He's surrounded by devotees. He's never on his own. 3, he can attract all living entities all over the universes. Guess how he does that? By playing his flute. 4, he has a wonderful excellence of beauty that cannot be rivaled anywhere in creation. Raghava Pandit, who was a great devotee of Lord Chaitanya, asks, he says, why is that form of the personality of Godhead, which he manifests only by his own wish, and which is made of the sweetness of transcendental pastimes? Why is it famous everywhere for its dark complexion? Why is that form of Krishna, having pastimes with his devotees, so famous? I was thinking in the material world, the topmost active principle that's going on in the material world is that attraction between male and female. The topmost active principle, that deep-rooted attraction between the male and female, and it's under the control of Kamadev, or it's sometimes called Cupid. So this attractive principle in the material energy, it's coming from Krishna because it's his nature. It's very difficult to overcome that attraction. Very difficult for the material, for a limited, like a conditioned soul, for us to withstand the attractions of Cupid, Kamadev. But Krishna is described as Madan Mohan. What's that mean? Do we know? Madan Mohan. He's the attractor of Krishna. He is so attractive that Cupid is attracted to him. Krishna is also described as the transcendental Cupid. Instead of carrying, like Cupid shoots arrows like lust and attachment, it's described though that Krishna carries, you remember Krishna Rupa, what arrows he carries? Krishna carries arrows. He carries the arrows of flowers. So, I wouldn't mind being shot with the arrows of flowers. In the Bhagavatam, it's described that just as there is material attachment is a source of bondage, so attachment towards something transcendental is a source of liberation. And Krishna's foremost devotee, Srimati Radharani, she is described Madan Mohan Mohini. Now, Krishna is the attractor of Cupid, but she is the attractor of Krishna. Madan Mohan, Krishna, he can attract even Cupid, but she is the attractor of Krishna. In a text called the Radha Rasa Sutta Nidhi by Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati, it says, so powerful is the glancing of her eyes that the flute slips from Krishna's hands. His peacock crown starts to slip, and his yellow shawl becomes displaced as he swoons and falls to the ground. That is the intensity of her attraction. There's a verse that says, alas, will I ever get the chance to serve with love and devotion such a person as Radharani? Prabhupada says if we want to approach Krishna, we must take shelter of Srimati Radharani. She is the pleasure potency of Krishna, and only through her mercy can we develop our dormant love for Krishna. I read recently in the material world, what seems like love on the surface is actually envy and jealousy just beneath. It can seem like love, superficially. But in the spiritual world, what seems like jealousy and envy on the surface is actually deep love just below the surface. With your permission, I was thinking because Janmashtami is coming very soon, I've left it a bit late with my timing, but I'd like to read a little pastime, if possible. This is in a book by Shivaram Maharaj, one of Prabhupada's very senior disciples. And the book is, it's a compilation of the commentaries of Prabhupada, Vishwanath Chakravarti, Jiva Goswami, and Sanatan Goswami, and Srila Sridhar Maharaj. So in those pastimes like Prabhupada talks about in the Krishna book, these other acharyas have also made commentaries. So Shivaram Maharaj has woven those different commentaries together into one narrative. I'm just going to pick a bit out. It starts, the cowherd boys, headed by Balaram, also had flutes, horns, sticks and ropes, and they smiled and dressed and enjoyed just like Krishna. As he stepped out into the courtyard, some young gopis, servants of Mother Jasoda, showered Krishna with many tiny jasmine flowers.
After respecting his breakfast, surrounded by his friends, Sri Krishna left his home for the forest, churning the minds of the gopis. That same gopi who had spoken earlier continued her description of Sri Hari. She says, "Dear friends, I will now elucidate the decoration which has made today's excursion into the forest so special. As usual, Sri Krishna wears his customary ornamentation, fashioned from the stream of nectar flowing from Mother Jasoda's heart. But what distinctive attire makes a special wonder of this day? It is the natural adornments of Vrindavan forest, which are but the harvested love of its presiding deity, our dear friend Sri Vrinda. As they stand beneath the shelter of a large banyan tree, its many birds silently watching Sridham instruct the gopas in dressing Krishna, one is led to wonder at the purpose behind his special forest attire. What is the special purpose and what is he demonstrating today? Her soft, mesmerizing voice says, "Sakis, with what aim in mind has Govinda created such a festival of bliss today?" Speaking with an impish smile, mild sarcasm veiling her lotus mouth, she says, "Dear friends, I will reveal what is on my mind. When actors appear on a dramatic stage, they dress in mind-enchanting costumes to please the eyes of their audience. Ladies," she says, "you please tell me, which audience in the highly public playhouse of Vrindavan's forest does Krishna plan to delight with his gay dress? Who is he trying to impress?" A ripple of laughter flows through that gathering of gopis as they look at each other with their doe-like eyes in merriment. As the gopis always think of Sri Krishna, he too always thinks of them. As is customary for young boys, he dresses to attract the attention of the young girls of Braj. This is her conclusion. Dear Shakis, with closed eyes or with your eyes open, please envisage Sri Krishna's soft, wavy hair, now decorated with peacock feathers and bunches of small multicolored flowers. These flowers are like an abundance of stars in the vast blackness of Keshava's curly hair. A blue lotus flower on one ear is the brooding moon, and many soft mango sprouts on the other are the rays of the rising sun. The flowers, sprouts, and lotus emit waves of fragrance, which intoxicates Sri Krishna, while his reddened eyes roll with the season of new adolescence. Can you smell that divine bouquet? With their eyes closed, like perfected yogis, the gopis raise their delicate noses as if flying into the fragrance of Krishna's forest attire. I could go on. We've only got a couple of minutes before 8:30, so I'll pause. Yeah, you had something you wanted to... Maybe if you ask the question, I can repeat it for...
You mentioned chant to be happy. As we chant, our deficiencies, which you also mentioned, become more apparent.
Unfortunately.
And as we become more and more... You understand my question? It's very difficult to be happy when we see so much.
With our deficiencies?
Of our weaknesses. So if you could speak on that.
So as we chant, what's that stage called, the clearing stage? Bhajana Kriya? Yes. That's the stage we're at. We're at the clearing stage, Bhajana Kriya. That our deficiencies, our anartas, become obvious to us, or more obvious. There's a word that Rabindra Swarup uses. As he say, it's actually shocking when we look at them. So how to be happy? I think that we can only be who we are at the moment. We can't pretend that we're something else. But nor, if you look back on where you were, you'll see that there's a huge change has happened. A huge amount of advancement has happened. So if that's happened already, then all you have to do is, I think the difficulty that I've experienced also is, as a Westerner, to be patient, isn't it? Just to hang in there. Just keep doing what we're doing. Sometimes we want a change to happen in too short amount of time, and we forget that over a little longer amount of time, that huge change will happen. So, one way to be happy would be to have confidence that the process is working. Once upon a time, you wouldn't have even seen those anartas. So that's an advantage. We can see what we need to clear, and then to just immerse ourselves in kirtan. Prabhupada says in the beginning of the songbook, he says the safest place to be in the material world is to be absorbed in kirtan ras. Did that answer? Or?
Thank you, Prabhupada. Yeah.
I would love to keep reading, as usual. I always run out of time, but I recommend this book. It's the Vena Gita. It's just like Krishna book, but there's a bit more. It expands a little bit more than what Prabhupada was able to give us in the Krishna book. Like I'll go on just a tiny bit, he says. So while entering the forest, Sri Hari looks over his shoulder, and he saw that his parents and elders were no longer following him when they left that morning after breakfast to go and take the calves out. He looks over his shoulder, and he sees that his parents and elders are no longer following. Blooming with joy, he jumped forward, free and restless as a mad elephant. With the gestures of her lovely arms, the movements of her lotus eyes, and the facades of her facial expressions, she mimics the conduct of Krishna and his friends. Like newly released baby elephants, the cowherd boys were dancing, singing, laughing, leaping, feeling ecstatic, stumbling, joking, playing with one another. They imitated Sri Krishna's activities, like standing peacefully in front of his mother, while restlessly looking at the girls of Braj. And his faltering voice when she speaks to him in Sri Radha's presence. Some of the boys went between vines and imitated the gopis' restless glances through slightly opened veils. And others parried his arched eyebrows as he cast messages to his girlfriends. As the gopis agreeably heard the conduct of Sri Krishna's friends, they erupted in peals of happy laughter. It goes on and on. One point that was interesting is that the gopis can see these pastimes going on as if they're right there, but we know they're not. But Prabhupada just says, he says, for those people who meditate constantly on Krishna's activities and forms with love, within their heart, those pastimes will become visible. And he says, if we follow that same process, like the gopis, then the same thing will work on us. That Krishna's pastimes will become visible to us within our heart. So it's a nice message just ahead of Janmashtami. Krishna Rupa Prabhu, Hare Krishna. Can someone run the microphone over to Krishna Rupa, please? Very good running, thank you. Hold it down. Maybe someone could run this one over. That one's dead.
Sorry about that. I just wanted to make a couple of points, if that's okay. Thank you so much for the wonderful class, Ram Prasad Prabhu. And just one thing I did want to say is that Ram Prasad was the very first devotee I ever saw. At my first time I ever went to the temple in Burnett Street, end of 1972, and Ram Prasad was in charge of greeting guests before we went into the temple. And I don't know if you remember, but there was a little tap, and you very, very sweetly smiled and then asked everyone to wash their feet.
Which indicates the determination of Krishna Rupa. Despite I was the first person she came across, she wasn't dissuaded, she kept coming.
Well, your Ram Prasad's smile was so welcoming and so beatific that I always think of that. And when we greet guests, we should always greet them with a big smile. So I just wanted to say, I was in Prabhupada's quarters in Mayapur when he was visiting there. And he was staying there for a couple of months, was I think 1976. And one devotee asked Prabhupada, does the pure devotee see Krishna everywhere? And Prabhupada held out the palm of his right hand and he looked down, he said, pure devotee, if there's a drop of water in the palm of his hand, he sees Krishna, he sees all of Krishna's associates and all of the cows. So you were just talking about how Krishna's never alone. So Prabhupada was saying, just with a drop of water, he sees all that. That's the vision of the pure devotee. And just speaking very briefly on that point you made, that verse, Krishna carries what we lack and preserves what we had. There's a very wonderful, Prabhupada mentions this at a number of times, and he talks about the borrowed plumes that, Krishna provides us with our intelligence, our initiative, and where we should never think that the good ideas are our ideas. And I was just trying to find the exact verse, but it's in, but I couldn't, but it's in 1:15, let me see, 21, oh gosh, now I've lost it. It says, Arjuna's speaking, I have the very same Gandiva bow, the same arrows, the same chariot drawn by the same horses, and I use them as the same Arjuna, to whom all the kings offered their due respects. But in the absence of Lord Krishna, all of them at a moment's notice have become null and void. It is exactly like offering clarified butter on ashes, accumulating money with a magic wand, or sowing seeds on barrow land. And in the purport, just the first few sentences, Prabhupada says, as we have discussed more than once, one should not be puffed up by borrowed plumes. All energies and powers are derived from the Supreme Source, Lord Krishna, and they act as long as he desires and cease to function as soon as he withdraws. So it's such a beautiful, thing to meditate on.